Welcome to Visions of Victory, our weekly broadcast of Bethlehem Baptist Church in Springhouse, Pennsylvania. Thank you for joining us, where we remember the words of the psalmist David. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. So sit back and relax, because the next voice you'll hear is that of our pastor, Charles W. Quann.
We're not what we want to be. But we thank God we're not what we used to be. And that resonates with some of us who are knowledgeable in their own heart about where they used to be. There are times when you wish you could just bottle the spirit and just keep it there. And when your soul gets dry, you just pour it out. Allow the spirit to breathe on you. A young lady came in my office this week. It's not confidential. She said, "Pastor, you can tell anybody." She said, but not only am I a cancer survivor, but I've been free from addiction. She said, I've been homeless. I've been through hell, but God brought me back. Anybody know that God can change you? Anybody know that God, anybody here know that God can change you? And when God changes us, then we're called upon to be faithful. God has not called us to be successful, but rather to be faithful. And for the last few weeks, I've been speaking to our leadership about being faithful. That it's not about position. It's about where your heart is. And we have some faithful people in this church. They represent the many men and women of God who serve God daily. And I'm going to ask two of them just to come now, that they represent the faithful people here at Bethlehem. One is Michelle Bradley. Michelle, would you come here a moment? And the other is Debbie Sandgreen. Debbie, would you come up here a moment? Come right here, Michelle. You have worked with our deaconess and other men and women in this church regarding our pantry. And you have been faithful, and because of your faithfulness, somebody else has caught hold of that. And so this week, as Giant celebrated their 90th anniversary, they gave to the church these baskets, and in these baskets is also a gift certificate that can be used for the pantry. To God be the glory. And Deborah, you have proven to be not only a faithful servant here as one of our trustees, leading the budget committee, but your commitment to make a difference in the lives of people through the YMCA, where you now serve as chairperson of the board. And I spoke to Ken Lawrence, who's also on the board, just the other day about how you do not waver in your conviction to lift Christ up in the midst of the board. And so I want to pin you for your commitment to love God and serve people and to make a difference in the lives of God's people in the church, in the world, and in our community. You see it, and I want to pin you for it. God bless you. God bless you. And these are just two women, you may take your seat, who represent what it is to be faithful. Not just here in the church, but also in the body of believers in the world. And when you read God's word, you see the emphasis on being faithful. You see that in 1 Corinthians, the 4th chapter, the 1st and 2nd verse. The New Living Translation reads in this manner: so look at Apollos and me as mere servants of Christ, who have put in charge of explaining God's mysteries. Not a person who's put in charge as a manager must be faithful. And my brothers and sisters, the message this morning is we have been called to be faithful. Won't you say that with me? We have been called to be faithful. You may take your seat. This matter of being faithful is crucial and critical to our walk with God. And as you read this profound chapter, you see that in Paul's view, apostles are servants of Christ. They're subject to Christ, not subject to the people that they may serve. And that those of us who have been called, whether you are apostle, whether you are a minister, whether you are a layperson, all of us have been called to be faithful. A title does not define us. What defines us is our faithfulness to God. Can I get a witness? And consequently, those of us who are called to proclaim the word, we're under the auspices of God. Sometimes those persons who view this ministry as a wonderful seat have not taken into account that it requires sacrifice. You cannot waver in bringing God's word to his people. And you cannot be concerned about being popular. When you serve God, whatever position you're in, you have to do what God has called you to do, not based upon what people may think. When we look at Paul's view of being faithful, he shares the word with us that all of us who have been called are also called to be ministers of the gospel. We don't talk about it much, but the priesthood of all believers. That means that all of us are ministers in some degree. Amen. We don't talk about that too much. We put more emphasis on titles, but we all been called, and because we're called, we all have an equal responsibility to live holy lives. Paul demonstrates the mark of being faithful, even though his heart is broken. When you serve God, you will have your heart broken. And one who is faithful to God is not seeking self-satisfaction. They have a concern for a deeper spiritual relationship with God. I've asked the question so many times as we serve in ministry, can we say that we have grown spiritually as a result of our being involved in ministry? So the question I asked to the choir and to the ushers and to the parking ministry and to the kitchen ministry and to the choirs and to all of us, have you grown individually as a result of walking in that seat? If not, why not? And sometimes we spend more time around the tasks than around spirituality. And you can get burned out doing the tasks, but you can't get burned out seeking to be spiritual. Some of us are burned out because we're doing the tasks. And for those of us also who can attest to the fact that God has made a change in our lives, because Paul was also speaking about a changed life. He was not the same person that he was early in his life. He had a Damascus Road experience. And before you can be faithful, you must have an experience of a conversion. Sometimes we try to do the work without being converted. Let me preach right here this morning. Because your flesh will get in the way. You cannot be faithful if you have not had a relationship with God, because people will burn you out, tire you out, and mess you up. Paul did not allow himself to be swayed by people who gave him accolades. And Paul was well trained. He deserved accolades, but he didn't let that go to his head. He knew who he was and who he was serving, and consequently he was faithful even when he was criticized, put in prison. Paul was still faithful to the end. And the Lord is calling us to be faithful to whom much is given, much is required. So for those of us who have been changed, we have a responsibility. I heard folk getting happy when we said a wonderful change has come over us, and that's true, but that also requires some responsibility. To serve him in season and out of season, to serve him when things are well and when things are not so well, to be faithful in the little things. And my brothers and sisters, sometimes we assume that being faithful is that at the end of this journey, God is going to bless us to saying, "Well done, thy good and faithful servant." And yes, that's true. But on the other hand, when you're faithful in this life, he will also reward you in this life. Can I get a witness? Okay, stop right there. You don't have to wait till you die to hear the Lord say, "Well done." Don't you want to hear the Lord say, "Well done" right now? Anybody want to die before you hear it? I want the Lord to say, "Well done" now. Because if he can't say it now, he's not going to say it by and by either. To be faithful. I've said on many occasions that I've seen folk join the church and they are on a ball of fire. But that fire soon goes out. because they have not counted the cost. It costs something to follow Christ. Can I get a witness? Anybody know it costs something to follow Christ? It's amazing how we do. You know, they have online doctorates. You can be a bishop overnight. Just, I mean, you want a bishop's license? I tell you where to go. You want to be a bishop? They got bishop licenses. In fact, they even got a license, but you can preach. That's not being faithful. You got to earn. Come on, somebody. You got to earn it. Nobody gives nothing for nothing. Nothing's free. And money can't buy you faithfulness. Everybody want to be a bishop. You know, Baptist church has changed. We didn't have bishops before. Some of you 50-year members, we didn't have bishops. Everybody's a bishop now, bishop. Sometimes, your flesh gets in the way. People say, my wife said, the other night said, they sent a letter to the house, Reverend Doctorate, Dr. Quann. I'm not a doctor. That is a title for those who have earned it. I'm not getting my ego up about no doctor. I'm not a doctor. But God is using me. I don't have to have a degree. God's still using me. Got to be secure who you are. Make you feel like you accomplished something. You don't even have an elementary school. You call about it, you're a doctor. Because we get hung up on titles. God can use anybody. You don't need a title to define that. We made too much mockery out of this matter of serving God. Get an honorary degree. You can get they don't call it honorary anymore. They just give you a degree. You don't even have an honorary degree. You just say you have a degree, Dr. So-and-so. And you, oh my God, don't that feel good? And I must admit, I said to my wife, I was teasing her, I said, do you see what they call your husband? She said, they don't know you like I do. But the flesh gets in the way. And anything we do, God gets the glory. And all of us have this ego and pride when people tell us things. Don't believe everything people tell you. People tell you look good. Don't believe it. They're just trying to say something to keep you quiet. And if they tell you you did a good job, just say, praise God. Don't take it to heart. My God, we can't even accept a compliment. God has called us to be faithful. And this is what I want to tell you. That's why. Do you realize, my brothers and sisters, that there are many preachers, listen to me, who have degrees, have gone back to school, made sacrifices, and they have no church or a church with about 5 people. And because we measure growth based upon size, but God is still faithful to that preacher who might have 5 members. Come on, somebody talk to me. And when we look at particularly the African American church, we knew about those churches where pastors had 2 and 3 churches and didn't have a salary, but had their food given to them by members of the church. That was their pay. But God holds them faithful. And God's not going to ask us whether or not you've been faithful because you have somehow allowed yourself to be surrounded by good people. He wants to know what did you do with what I gave you. So it's not how many gifts you have, but how you use those gifts. Come on, somebody talk to me. Some of us are waiting to have some miraculous gift fall down. You already got a small gift. You can't handle that. You want God to give you these big gifts. Use what you have to the glory of God. Whatever you have, do it the best of your ability. Give God the best. Don't settle for anything less. Give God the best. Maybe you can't sing, but just hum. Come on, somebody talk to me. Whatever you do, do it to the glory of God. And never look at one ministry better than another. All of us are God's children, and God calls all of us to be faithful. And sometimes we anticipate or expect the preacher to be more faithful than you. No, God's blessed you the same way He's blessed me, so I'm as faithful, but you're called to be faithful. I said before, and it sounds really trite, but it's true, the deacons can have a little wine. Guess the trustees can have a lot. And the preacher has none. That's what, but on the other hand, take that same scenario. Does the preacher have more faith than a deacon? Or is a deacon called to be more faithful? No. It's not about title. All of us are called to be faithful. All of us are called to live holy lives. And I wish if we couldn't do anything else that we can get the congregation to be faithful. Not to say, well, it's raining outside, I'm not going to church today. It looks kind of cloudy, I'm not going, I got a toe ache. Be faithful in what God's called you to do. If you're a pew member, be faithful in that. Can I get a witness? Whatever you do, do it to the best of your ability. Give God the best that you have. And don't get hung up because you might not have a degree, or maybe you can't speak like somebody else, or maybe you can't sing like somebody else, or pray like somebody else. Do whatever you can do to the God's ability that's given to you, and He will give you the reward. Can I get a witness? 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 I wish that I could preach like T.J. Jakes. I mean, the brother is good. I wish I could sing like Pastor Alan Waller. He is good. He can good sing, preach. But all God has given me is these little gifts, and I'm going to use them to the best of my ability. I may not be like somebody else, but I want God to say, you're faithful, faithful, faithful in what I've given you to do. Preach the word. Be faithful in doing that. Serve God. Be faithful in doing that. Honor God. Be faithful in doing that. Do everything you can to the best of your ability, and I will bless you. Can I get a witness? Can I get a witness? Can I get a witness? And that's why you don't have to be envious of anybody else. Whenever I get a chance, I go to hear Pastor Waller. I try to bring the best preachers here who can preach your socks off. But God's given me some gift, and I'm not upset about anybody else's gift. I'm doing the best I can. And I know who I am, and I know whose I am. Some of you are not using your gifts because you're envious about somebody else. If you don't use it, you'll lose it. If you don't use it, you'll lose it. So you don't have to be like anybody else. Just be who you are. And God will give you the glory. Can I get a word? Anybody here know what I'm talking about? Anybody here know what I'm talking about? I'm so glad I serve a faithful God. I may be unfaithful at times, but I'm so glad He's faithful. Anybody know God is faithful? Anybody here know that God is faithful? I need a witness in the house. Anybody here know that God is faithful? Anybody here, He'll never leave nor forsake you? Anybody here? I need a witness in the house. Anybody know that God is all right? Say yeah. Say yeah, yeah, yeah. Say yeah. Say yeah. Faithful is our God. And the one thing I try to do here at Bethlehem is be faithful. You can criticize me, you can second guess me, you can do anything else, but I tried to be faithful. And I want the Lord to say, well done. And I don't want to just hear it when I die. At the end of the day, Lord, you've been faithful, Charles Quann. Yes, sir. Don't you want to hear the Lord call your name? Anybody want to hear the Lord call your name? Anybody want to hear the Lord call your name? I'm finished. Do you have it? I keep on going. I'm out of time, but if you don't have it, I keep on going. Ask yourself, am I faithful? Are you faithful? Are you faithful? Are you faithful? There's a price to be paid when you're faithful. Sometimes you have lonely nights. Look at Paul. Ostracized, criticized, persecuted for being faithful. And Paul says, just look at me, and Apollos says, mere servants of Christ. I want to say this. He's on my mind. He's on my mind. He's on my mind. And I just ask you, keep him in prayer. Because I know the heart of Reverend Dal Washington. And Reverend Tamika Moore said to me on more than one occasion to this congregation, Pastor, we know your heart. And I know the heart of Reverend Dal Washington. I know the heart of Reverend Kevin Mitchell. I know the heart of Minister Keith Hodges. And none of them have a church. But even though you might not have a church, you're faithful.
We hope you've been inspired and encouraged by today's message. You're invited to visit us at Bethlehem Baptist, a warm multicultural church with 2 Sunday services, 9 o'clock and 11:15 a.m. We're located in Springhouse, Pennsylvania, at Penland Pike and Dager Road, only 15 minutes from Philadelphia. We hope to see you soon. God bless you, and remember, love God, serve people.